Good evening, and welcome to tonight's off-kilter version of an Arcane Adventures episodes. We've never really done this before, guys, and we are here as a group to do a little bit of recapping after some events. Unfortunately, due to errors and technical difficulties beyond our control and beyond our knowledge, we lost our audio during Chapter 6, Episode 5, during the fight with Keramira underneath the watermouth intake plant. And so I have asked our wonderful lore keeper and also just another one of our players to help me recap the events of this episode during this combat scene. And so that's what we're going to do this evening. So bear with us if we try out this new format. But we are going to call this little mini series Legends and Lore, or actually it's Lore and Legends, but that's what we're going to go with. Anyway, so we pick back up having infiltrated the now lowest floor, I suppose, of the watermouth intake plant, going below the last named floor below the generator, into a subterranean cavern, which is revealed to be the lair of Keramira, the Bright Shadow, and her employees, as they're doing some other organizational work here. It seems to be something surgically, medically related. And the group has done a pretty good job so far of keeping their stealth. However, their stealth has been lost and their cover has been blown, and at least one other guard, but turns out the entire workforce is aware of their presence. And so as they round the corner, about to head into this massive chamber, Owenel kind of is sent ahead to scout out as Ultrix is being attacked by one of the guards who's coming up to take a look and see what the commotion is. And as Owenel kind of enters into the cavern, it's a much larger space. There is this core reactor that's built up in the middle. Lots of equipment is whirring around. There's sounds and the echoes of water in the distance powering all of this machinery. There's an active surgery going on. There's several mechanicals that are in the room, along with several guards and scientists and assassins and thieves. And then obviously the Bright Shadow herself. But I will let our players kind of explain what, from their perspective, they were seeing.
Yeah. So to start off, uh, Owenel starting this combat on behalf of Lorem Ipsum, uh, throws a bless up to try and help out the party, charges forward, and immediately finds themselves face to face with a whole slew of bad guys, attempting to provide some aid to his companion. Ultrix also charges forward, eyeing Keramira at the center of the room, and he, along with other members of the party, including their temporary companion Ulysses, begin a barrage of ranged attacks against Keramira before they can really defend themselves. And although they are able to get a good bit of damage in, uh, it does not go quite as well as they had hoped. Ultrix hoping that this room, like the site beneath Provenere, is full of civilians and not all bad guys, is a little more cautious with their attack and ends up paying the price as nope, there are predominantly guards, mechanicals, those who are willing to fight on behalf of Keramira. And this, I guess, reservation in this attack would end up being quite an error on their behalf.
Yeah, and so our party, they're not really fully into the chamber yet. They're still kind of filtering into what we're calling like an entrance hallway. But it turns out this proves to be a little bit more of a fatal funnel scenario, as their attacks are launching, kind of like Owens was saying. Um, Not maybe releasing the full velocity of their attacks because of the fear that perhaps some of these could be civilians. And like he said, turned out to be that these were predominantly guards, and perhaps even ready for this kind of encounter. Maybe Keramira, a little bit more cautious after the events in Provenere, now more defended in her surgery center here. in hydroxylvexin. And so the Bright Shadows forces do not take any time. This is going exactly like she had predicted it would be. It was going to plan. And so they step up and fire some massive spell damage down into that hallway, which of course all of our party is clumped together. So this ninth level cone of cold sends icicles and freezing air down the hallway and drops like the group. I think some of you were at like half health or even lower. We made several Constitution saving throws in that area, just during that short time frame, and then 2 fireballs right after that at 5th level. So these just massive barrage of damages coming in, and then unbeknownst to Paloma, who was the first one to actually charge in fully into the room,
Yeah.
there's this psychic wall, and I'll let Anna kind of take it from there.
So Paloma has no ranged attacks. So she was, I'll go straight into the room. I'll I'll engage Keramira, take her out as quickly as possible. Um, but she comes running around the corner, runs face first into a psychic wall, and then because she can't do anything else, can't go through the wall, realizes that she has several vials of FSD in her bag, and taking a note out of Ultrix's book, takes one out and hurls it in the last place she saw Keramira after she went invisible, and manages to drug like almost like a good chunk of the mages who are left there, um, and kind of catch them off guard.
Yeah, and then I think Ultrix, you had a similar idea, kind of follow in pursuit. So you want to tell us a little
Yes.
bit more about what you did?
With Paloma throwing in the FSD vial, I recalled the FSD vial that earlier that session had been handed to me by Pura. I guess actually it was the previous session. I think it was. Uh, I had also a spare FSD vial, and it just so happened that another 20-foot circle is all you needed to get the everybody else in the room. Uh, with the 2 FSD vials thrown into the room, almost every combatant was now high on FSD, giving them disadvantage on attack rolls, saving throws, ability checks, unable to target people for ranged attacks, or especially in some of the more martial guards cases, unable to close any distance. The only people in the room who were not affected were any mechanicals. One of the casters remained unaffected for a single round before they accidentally stayed in the FSD too long, ending their turn still within the zone. And Keramira herself, who had been able to avoid the initial blast in her invisible state. With all these enemy combatants drugged, it provided much needed reprieve for the party, who several had gone down to the previous barrages, and those who were still up were not up with a lot, if I recall correctly, kind of at the sort of front line, holding a lot of these enemy combatants. It was Ultrix and Paloma, who I think Ultrix was about 50 HP, and Paloma
10.
having taken a lot, about 10 HP, because forgot you had evasion.
Yep.
Big tough.
I should
So,
character.
Yeah,
fortunately, with
so
the FSD, they're able to kind of hold them off right at where the psychic barrier kind of is. Ultrix being able to throw in the FSD, also able to use flamethrower, as well as giving the rest of the party time to get people back up and keep hurling ranged attacks into the haze of drugs and enemies.
yeah, so it definitely was a major turning point in the combat here. As a dungeon master, I was not expecting the group to respond and retaliate with the items that I gave them from previous encounters. And I leave it up to the ingenuity of our players, and they did a creative job of finding a solution to even out the battlefield for sure. And so Karamira got quite literally a taste of her own medicine, as she watched her entire enemy forces be almost stuck in this like standstill and unable to really continue the fight. And so she was invisible, like Anna had said, and was actually getting prepared to escape. She was going to flee the scene and leave the group to handle it, but turning back to realize that perhaps her operations would be compromised because her workers were not doing what they were supposed to be doing because they were under the effects of FSD. She decided to drop that invisibility, sprint through the drug haze, as we're calling it, and kind of get right up on that psychic barrier and then kind of enter melee combat with some of our party. So she actually went to fight Paloma first, and Paloma, you were already low, and so she downed you, turned to Owenel, who was already downed, and then turned to Ultrix and went ahead and proceeded to attack him as well. And so she, in doing this, gets really close. She's doing kind of the heavy, dirty work herself. But she's also putting herself in a dangerous position because the party, who is unaffected by FSD, is all like right there. And even though they're in some pretty tough predicaments themselves, what happens next, I suppose. But yeah.
And despite the fact that she was down and could only make either an action or a bonus action, Paloma did manage to land some hits on Keramira, and was able to like chip away at her health so that Rancor could come up and with Ozen, like finally cut her down. And he took the moment to, get his revenge. He dramatically told her that it was for his parents, and then he murdered her. And it was, I think, very satisfying for him. But despite the fact that Keramira was down, the rest of the mages decided to keep fighting, even though their boss was dead, which is unusual. And unfortunate because several party members were still very low, despite Owenel doing his best to heal us all. But with Keramira gone, a major threat was taken out. So the party just held their ground in the hallway and kept fighting.
Yeah, with Keramira down, the only one who was not under the effects of FSD, the party was able to kind of do like a tag team swap out as Paloma, Owenel, and Ultrix pulled back from the front line, and Evidin, Raincore, who had taken a step back previously, were able to come forward and sort of tag out essentially. As those in the front line fell back, firing stuff, back their way as they retreated, everyone else coming forward. The battle looked like it was kind of like coming to a end, with ranged attacks coming from Evidin, Ultrix, and Ulsis. God, even now I can't remember his name. Ulsis firing all ranged attacks, just taking down the spellcasters one after the other. Those who are still, firing shots. The clay golem coming very near the close of death, and party members such as Evidin and Owenel, once again distributing healing, getting those who were critically injured back up and fighting.
I also wanted to mention that the Pura's hat came back into play. Sizik was very injured and near the front line, and Pura, who was near the back, because he had also been injured, used his hat to call Sizik away from the front line and get him out of danger, which was very nice.
A lot of use of items in this fight. FSD, the hat, as well as Owenel remembering to use his armor, calling in a knight.
Yeah. Paloma remembered
to
that she had a enchanted or an enspelled quarterstaff.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of great use of items. Again, especially that night, having another 60-some hit points to again tag out in that front line while everyone was not doing good. However,
Um, during the like barrage of ranged attacks, Ulysses like spotted one enemy at the back who had not been damaged at all, and decided to attack that person. And in firing at that enemy, fired through the generator that was, or the reactor that was in the center of the room, and detonated it. And it blew up basically everyone who was still alive, and took them all out, and cleared the room very nicely. Um, and the after that, once everyone was cleared, Ultrix used Thunderwave to clear the FSD cloud, make the room safe to enter, um, and the party began ransacking the room.
Yeah, and that kind of abruptly ended combat. Again, one of those moments that you place things on the battlefield and you're not quite sure if it'll ever come into play. And just getting to see kind of like all these enemies that are at like a quarter health. They've been under the effects of these drugs for like 3 or 4 rounds of combat now. They haven't made much progress against the party, and so it's really almost like the party is really gaining the upper hand. The fight's already, you can already see it moving that way. And this is just that like last big blow before it just clears the room. And so as combat kind of comes to a close, like Anna said, we get the opportunity to kind of loot through the remains of now an offline surgical facility. We find some memory transference device. Ultrix takes a keen interest in that. We find some parts that he's going to use for crafting, as well as just for a various compilation of loot, along with a little bit of coin. There's also a document that we find, kind of half charred in the explosion from the reactor, but it does draw a little bit of attention for our group, and it reads high priority patients, and has the names of 5 council members from Provenere, that of Athena Claremorth, Athaltos Steele, Dr. Hanasiface Chardolin, Galad Warvanian, and Priscilla Cleves. And so that kind of leaves our party to wonder what was going on there. And then they realize that this document is dated to about a week and a half ago, which places this file being written just a few days after the events of the terrorist attacks in Provenere, when they left the city a little bit after that. So um, lots to ponder through and sort through here, kind of in these immediate aftermath. It's a very somber moment, as Rancor has finally gotten some revenge, been able to fuel some power into Ozim, but also just mixed emotions. We think that our party has only been in the Twin Reservoirs for like 2 days, and we've spent 5 sessions here in Oshivester and Hydroxyvexin. And so there's been a lot that's happened in just these 2 days and a lot to unpack, especially with the events from just a little bit prior. So they're thinking through a lot. And in that thinking, we're still here in the surgical facility. They actually find another room. And Anna, will you just tell us what was in that room, since I know you were very excited to find it?
It was a gelatinous cube. We walked into the
Yeah.
room, and previously, Evelyn had tried to send her crow in there, and it felt a burning sensation and then died. Um, and then Osen refused to go in there, and when the party walked into a supposedly empty room full of dead bodies, um, I realized it was actually full of gelatinous cube. And thankfully,
Yeah.
no one stepped into it. I don't remember who it was that rolled high enough on perception to like see it, but no one fell victim to the gelatinous cube.
Yeah, there was a point in time where Owen'll almost slid down the body slide, and I think it took a combined effort of the players being like, "No, please don't." But anyway, nonetheless, after kind of gathering our thoughts here, we actually left off our session still in the surgical facility. Ulysses is kind of preparing his notes. He has to go back and make a report to the chancellor and kind of advise the party that whatever they don't take will probably be under supervision and in custody of the wave guard in the next day or so. And so just advise them to kind of just get through what they needed, and then exit as soon as they could. But I know that leaves us again in a very somber moment. And so, what are you guys, just as players, what are you thinking is next for Lorem Ipsum?
Well, we got to figure out how to get this gelatinous cube back.
It's worth so
Yeah,
much
this is
money.
true.
It's
Sure,
a
it's like
1,000
gold
gold.
pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1,000 gold pieces in Provenere.
1,000 gold. I think if I mean I don't know about you, Anna, but if just me and you do it, we can split it 50-50. Um,
Sure.
Yeah,
you think there's like a FedEx facility in Hydroxylvexin that we can?
You would have. It's probably pigeons, like it was in Provenere. You want to ship the gelatinous cube by pigeon?
We'll probably have to order some extra pigeons.
yeah, for sure.
If we
Uh,
leave the gelatinous cube, does that mean it becomes property of Oshia Vester?
Probably so. So you guys might as well take it, if
I
you
mean, how
can.
do we take it? How do you
I
grab it? Like I don't.
I mean, it had to get in here in the first place, right? So
I
there's got to be
think
a
it
way
was
out.
down here. I think it
Well,
was down here.
maybe so. I don't know.
In any case, we'll have to figure that one out. Maybe Rancor read something in the book. Uh, in any
Any
case,
other?
in actuality, I mean, I know that, I mean, just prior to recording this, me and Anna had a lot of speculation on these high priority patients. You know, this facility was designed for replacing people with these robots that we'd seen previously.
They're all pythons.
Yeah, we don't the origin of Ulysses as well as the bot that replaced Esquire Roran back in Provenere. So, you know, the question was, are the people on this high priority patients, is this do we want them to be patients, or are they already patients, or have they been replaced? And it's just kind of a question of how far have they already gotten, is like, or a big question, at least to me.
Yeah.
And we left that poor guy back at the elevator. He's been standing there for not even a minute. We're gonna come back.
We sent Ono back to just say, hey,
Yeah.
we won.
Covered in blood.
Yeah.
For sure.
Uh,
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of things that our party has to sort through. We still got a lot of unpacking to do just from the other sessions here in the Twin Reservoirs. Then you add this on top of this, so I think we've got a lot coming up in our next session. But you guys have already talked about some burning questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to add in these closing moments?
so why can't I make mayonnaise?
No. Anyway, I think that's a good time to close. That's a great question to close on. Thank you all for joining us again. We're very sorry for technical difficulties. But I hope that this little filler episode will help you catch up on the events that you missed, and then we'll see you back for Chapter 6, Episode 6, as we continue next week. Thank you, and have a good night.